Hey everybody, Pastor Randy here again, and I wanted to share another devotional thought for the week. And one of the principles that we know in the New Testament is that we're saved by grace through faith. We're also justified by our works that our faith is true. Now, we know that salvation comes by that faith through grace, not a work of ourselves. And yet, as we're believers, we're supposed to do good works because of our faith. Our faith has changed the way that we live, the way we conduct ourselves. It transforms us from who we were and some of our natural tendencies that are against God to the point of having this new beginning or this born-again experience where we begin to live different. Those changes, those works, those activities justify that our faith is true. And so we're going to look into James here in just a moment, but we're going to go to the Old Testament first because sometimes our Christian activity and our work can disguise what's really happening behind that. And so I want us to remember when God was going to take the kingdom away from King Saul, and he has sent Samuel to the house of Jesse to anoint one of his sons to be the coming and rising king, okay? And of course we know, because we have knowledge from reading, that he anoints a young boy named David, who becomes King David. And so in this process, you'll find it in 1 Samuel chapter 16. Samuel arrives, he's looking through the sons, and he goes through the line, and, he gets these thoughts of surely, the one that's standing before me now is the one who is surely going to be king. He looks at the boy's stature, what he looks like, what he seems to be like, and the Lord interrupts Samuel. And it's here in verse 7, and it says, "But the Lord says to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him." Rejected this particular son. And so, for the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. And so, we're familiar with that whole understanding that the Lord looks into the depth of who we are. But when we look into James, chapter 2, it talks about these outward actions that justify our faith, these outward things that we see, that people see, that the Lord sees. But it's an interesting dialogue here, not dialogue, sorry, but an exhortation that James gives. It's in chapter 2. He says this, verse 14, "What good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but doesn't have works?" So works is important. Works will never save us. Remember that. But works justify our faith. And it says the one who doesn't have any works, can that kind of faith save him? So faith produces works or change in us. And so he goes on here. "But someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I will show you my faith by what I do. You believe that God is one, you do well." And he says, even the demons believe in God, but they shudder. And so it's talking about this faith that is supposed to produce works, these outward recognitions. And he goes on, verse 24, "You see that a person is justified by works, not by faith alone." Now understand this. We know that faith justifies us unto salvation. But he's talking about, from that point of faith, there's outward actions that matter, that confirm that we have a genuine faith. And so he goes on, you see that a person is justified by works, not by faith alone. And he goes ahead and gives examples. I want us to look at something that Jesus taught. It's in Matthew chapter 7. So remember, we've looked in the Old Testament. It says God looks on the heart, not on the outward, the appearance or the action or just the conduct. He says, Samuel, don't be fooled. I'm not choosing them. God looks deeper than what man can see. We move to James later in the New Testament. He says, hey, works and conduct and all of this is important, and it must be the product of having a genuine faith. Let's go back here. Matthew chapter 7. Jesus gives a very interesting teaching here. It's found in verse 22. And I'll tell you what, I'll start reading from verse 21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father in heaven. That's an alarming statement. Not everyone who calls him Lord or says, Lord, Lord, will enter. And so on that day, many will say to me, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Hey, that's an outward action. It's something that we do. And yet, he says, they will say these things and do these things, yet they are not allowed in. So watch. And they go on to say, didn't we cast out demons in your name? Didn't we do mighty works in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you people or workers of lawlessness. So here's the thing, is outward activity can be the product of faith. The counterpart is outward activity doesn't necessarily constitute faith or relationship with Jesus. You remember back in Matthew chapter 11, Jesus comes up on a fig tree, has a lot of leaves on it. It looks like it's going to have fruit. And he goes through this fig tree because he was hungry. And though it looked alive and it looked full, he found no fruit. And he cursed the fig tree. And it shrivels up and dies. You see, activity can make us look like we've got fruit. And we can deceive ourselves by some works and deceive others. They get these little snapshots of what we do. And yet God looks beyond the window dressing to see if the heart is in the right place. And if these works are coming out of relationship with Jesus, out of a love for him, out of an obedience to him, or are they just works and we think to ourselves, I've done this, I do that. We take a little inventory. And there's nothing wrong with taking inventory. But if we're just doing good works and Christian activity and volunteering and all of these things that would appear to be the conduct of a Christian, but really aren't bearing any fruit which God is looking for, then there's something wrong at the greater depth where God looks. And so we should be involved and we should do good things, and they are things that can justify our faith. But we have to remember that we can't lose out on relationship with Jesus, where we know him and he really knows us, so that on that day, after all of these good works, we haven't deceived ourselves as if we're going to make it. Salvation comes by grace through faith. God bless you, my friends.